It is said that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has one of the toughest jobs in politics. Why? Well, he's taken fire from both the left and the populist right, sometimes including yours truly, on a daily basis. Earlier this evening, believe it or not, I sat down with him, and he was nice enough to give an exclusive interview to the Ingraham Angle, where he addresses a range of topics: the wave of sex harassment revelations rocking Capitol Hill, the Alabama Senate race, and a lot more. But we began with the GOP's do-or-die tax reform push. Senator McConnell, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
I'm glad to be with you.
So you just left the Senate floor. The battle is underway for tax reform. How's it looking?
Unanimous Republican vote to go forward with the tax bill. Hope it'll be unanimous at the end, but we all agreed to get started after a lot of negotiations. I'm optimistic we're going to deliver comprehensive tax reform to the American people for the first time in 31 years.
Now, Marco Rubio and Mike Lee, kind of at last-minute move, are pushing for a hike in the corporate tax cut from 20% to 22%, and they then want to give more relief to lower-income people with children. Where is that going to go, and
well,
what is that? Is that going to be a monkey wrench in your plan here?
We'll see. I mean, it's open for amendment. There will be plenty of amendments, both on the Republican side and the Democratic side. But what I think we have 100% agreement on, Laura, is that we want to do comprehensive tax reforms for the first time since the second Reagan administration. You know, the dials may twist a little bit as we go along, but the core is middle-class tax relief and making our businesses more competitive against other businesses around the world, and to keep our jobs here in this country.
So Donald Trump originally wanted 15%, went up to 20%, and you're saying tonight it could go up to 22% after this is all over?
My preference is 20, but the Senate's going to work its will, and there are going to be plenty of amendments on both sides. But I think the core effort here, middle-class tax relief and keeping our jobs in the country, are going to be intact at the end.
Some of the headlines about what you're trying to do with tax reform, just a couple. GOP's ugly secret: tax plan would force a $250 billion cut in Medicare. $1.4 trillion to the deficit is going to really hurt higher education and going to make it more expensive, college presidents say. Specifically on this $250 billion cut over time in Medicare, so it's going to force spending cuts on Medicare.
That's, of course, completely false.
How?
It's just not. It's not true. We're not touching Medicare at all in this bill. Not at all. And on the deficit question you raised, we'd only have to grow 0.4% over the next 10 years. 0.4% over the next 10 years to fill that $1 trillion gap that the critics keep saying is going to sit there, as if the economy wasn't going to respond to this incredible relief it's going to get from the burden of high taxation. Nonsense.
So you're not worried about the deficit? You think the growth spurred by these tax cuts?
This is not going to be a deficit producing effort.
Why didn't you guys go with a border adjustment tax? That would have actually infused some more money into this process. You would have been able to get cleaner tax reform, cleaner tax cuts. Ryan was for it. Some people called it a value-added tax.
Yeah, there was a lot of resistance to that, a lot. And it was sort of aired out by the House last year when we were in early discussions about this. I couldn't have passed it in the Senate. We have to deal with what can pass. I need 50 votes. We have 52 Republicans. We have all 52 who want to get to yes. But that was just not something I could sell in the Senate.
John McCain has been kind of a thorn in the side of the Trump administration. They've had, acrimonious relationship going back to the campaign. Right now, do you think he's the biggest obstacle to this getting to the ultimate 50-50?
Well, he voted to get on the bill. And I know John McCain well enough to know he's not going to cast a vote on tax reform over how he may feel about the current occupant of the White House.
You don't think that comes into play at all?
I don't think so, no.
Let's move on to some other issues, because there's a lot going on in the country right now on a whole bunch of fronts. The Alabama Senate race has taken up a lot of oxygen in the political, landscape. He's up now in the polls 5%. You favored Luther Strange. A lot of money went into supporting Luther Strange. He didn't win. Roy Moore won. I actually supported Mo Brooks, but Roy Moore won. And now, of course, all these allegations against him. You said he should step aside. He may very well win this election. What does that say about your influence in the Senate, your influence? Does it have any implication for you? He wants to unseat you, he said.
Well, President Trump and I were on the same side. We both supported Luther Strange, even though you supported Mo Brooks. The people of Alabama decided to go in a different direction. And on December the 12th, they'll get to decide who they want to send to the Senate, and we'll deal with that when that happens.
So if that happens, there still are senators who say we could vote to expel him from the U.S. Senate. But what does that say to the state of Alabama? They've heard all the arguments. And I know you said you believe the women who came forward. I tend to think some of them are credible as well. But the people of Alabama are hearing it all.
They're going to make the decision in Alabama, and we'll. So
should you in the Senate then invalidate that by expelling him out?
We'll deal with the
two-thirds vote.
We'll deal with the aftermath of the decision the people of Alabama make on December 12th.
So you think it's a possibility he could be expelled from the Senate? I
think there's a possibility he will have an ethics issue.
An ethics investigation once he gets here?
Yeah, I think it's almost certain, yeah.
How far back will those allegations? They go back like almost 4 decades.
It'll be up to the committee.
Wow, there's a lot of ethics investigations going on.
That's true. Unfortunately.
Yeah, over in the Senate doesn't have any sort of fund like the House has. One of those, they're calling it a shush fund or a slush fund to settle settlements, sexual.
You're talking about harassment cases?
Yeah.
Well, we're taking a look at completely changing whatever the status quo is. I mean, 2 weeks ago in the Senate passed a measure to require mandatory training. We've got a bipartisan group of Republican and Democratic women in the Senate giving us advice about the next step, and clearly the status quo is not acceptable.
Well, Kirsten Gillibrand, who has been on this issue and it affects the military, junior senator from New York, she came out and she said, well, Bill Clinton really should have been, basically resigned. I mean, it's a little, Kirsten come lately on Bill Clinton. I mean, he was accused of raping Juanita Broderick and Paula Jones, Kathleen Willey, the list goes on. But now Democrats are kind of deciding to kick the Clintons to the curb. Do you find that to be credible, political? What is it?
Well, without relitigating all that, the question is, what are we going to do now? And we've already passed a measure requiring mandatory training. Before the end of the year, there's high likelihood we're going to pass either another Senate rule or legislation to outline the best way to handle these kind of cases in the future. Under any circumstances, whatever is passed, any member of Congress ought to be personally liable for any case that he or she loses.
Are you in favor of unmasking the names of those in any type of settlement group over in the House?
Retroactively?
Well, there's a whole bunch of people whose names are unknown, even apparently to the congressman who is in charge of the committee that's supposedly overseeing.
Well, Laura, I think my attitude about that is I want to wait and see what the women of the Senate recommend on that and the other issues we're talking about.
So it could be possible that we'll never learn?
I'm going to wait and see what the women of the Senate recommend on that issue.
Why just the women of the Senate? I mean, isn't everybody?
I think they're in a very good position to take the lead. Some men are involved as well on both sides.